Ladies and gentlemen, come gather round, come gather round, come gather around. Today, we're fixing a 1 in 100 no start situation. I think it's a starter. Let's go! Okay, here we are. We're disconnecting the battery. And I know you're looking at a 9-inch Ford differential right underneath a pickup truck. That's just the way it is. This is the place where I found I could put the battery. So I'm crawling up here and disconnecting the battery. Kind of a stupid place, but that's where it ended up being. I have reason to believe that the starter is at fault here. 1 in 100 cranks, this thing will not start. If I get a jump off of somebody, it'll crank fine and run. And even if it stalls right away, and then this thing had a tuning issue at the start where, and I've resolved that, that's a different video, but it had a tuning issue where cold starts were fine, but hot restarts, it would usually stall. So even if I got a jump off of somebody, it would restart again instantly, no problem at all. So it's not a dead battery. It's not a connection issue. I'm really good with electrical. And I know there's no ground issues, voltage drops anywhere. The issue, I believe, is inside the starter itself. So I ordered a new starter from Rock Auto. This starter, I'm pretty sure I got from Pick and Pull. Whether it's actually for the 6-liter that I'm currently running or not, who knows? But it bolted in, it worked enough, but I suspect there's an issue going on. So I've disconnected the key switch wire, which just pulls off. You can see it hanging on the bottom there now, covered by my melon. Oh, there it is again, a little bit of yellow on it. That connection, ladies and gentlemen, is like 30 bucks. And the wiring harness that I had was pulled out of a wrecked van by a wrecking company. And tow truck companies and junkyards are kind of sneaky in that they kind of chain the engine up and then cut everything that's attached to it. And that connection got knackered. So we're going to try and give that a fix. But that little connection there is missing. These are Torx. And I'm going to take a look inside that in a moment. So here's my new starter. And holy carp, look at that. This thing is actually significantly larger. That's good. This is the one of those times where what a man wants is good for you. Like bigger, better, more, everything. Oh, we like that. So we're squeezing that guy in there. And I confess, I've built everything in this truck. And when I build my vehicles, I do try to think of, can I service this? If I ever have to pull out the starter, can I get to it? Because I've cursed the people who've built my cars that I've built. And it's usually me. So that little crazy connection, again, 30 bucks for that guy, which I bought to put on the wiring harness because the towing company wrecked it. And this new starter just uses an eyelet. So, okay, I cut off my fancy new connection, strip the end, crimp on the connection. I can do this and not feel totally bitter. So, all right, we put the new end on. In some cases, especially with headers, you may find it useful to put header wrap around your starter to make it a little bit happier. Some folks had suggested that I needed some kind of shielding or header wrap around the starter because it wouldn't always restart, but I wasn't convinced that was the issue. Because it was just once in 100 cranks that it wouldn't start. It wasn't when it's hot it doesn't start. No, that wasn't the case at all. I always look at the rest of my fabrication here. The intermediate, I forget what it's called, the pipe that goes from the driver's side up to the passenger side. This is a turbocharged LS, and the exhaust is all done out of stainless. I did not put header wrap on this tube down below, the crossover pipe, that's what it is, because I didn't know if I really needed it or not. I'm undecided. The down pipe from the turbo is 4-inch exhaust, close to everything, so I've definitely header wrapped that. Apparently it's a good idea to install your header wrap and then spray it with like barbecue paint or header paint. I didn't. But if you were to do that, I'd recommend it. Also probably keeps less slivers in your hands when you're trying to handle things. Oh my gosh. So 2 bolts. Zip that thing back into place and that starter is in. And I assure you, guaranteed, this starter worked 100% flawless and has not let me down yet. So the problem was definitely in the starter. But then the question is, what went wrong in the starter? I want to know. So we're going to take a look at that.
Well, there we go.
We'll hook up the battery again. Whenever you're dealing with batteries, you always disconnect the negative first and reconnect the negative last. So if your wrench slips and touches the negative post in the frame, it does not matter because the negative battery post goes to the frame. Making sure it's nice and tight, like a tiger. Apparently I'm spending too much time getting that nice and tight. Move on, move on. Always exciting to make sure that your handiwork works. If you're a mechanic, you're always testing to make sure that you actually fix the problem before you give it back to the owner. Unless you're working on my car, in which case I discover you didn't actually do the job I asked, but that's neither here nor there. I have no one to blame but myself. So let's start blaming. Does it start? Yes, it does. So then the question needs to be, what went wrong? Now these are Torx, and while I have the right socket, I don't have a really deep one to get into that one on the bottom there. However, I'll find a solution. I think in this case I either had a deep Torx, but I think really what I had was just a regular hex that was big enough to fit over these, but too big to fit on the other side. I just couldn't get it to fit in there, and I didn't really want to turn it down on the lathe. Then I have these other ones that are kind of small, but they didn't fit really well, or the handle spun and the driving end didn't. But not to be deterred, where there's a whip, there's a way. And once I disassembled it, I could get in there. And then I reassembled my screwdriver just to do it the rest of the way. And this, the smaller cylinder here, is the solenoid. It has a loop of wire that receives some voltage from the key. The electricity going through that loop of wire creates a magnetic field. The magnetic field affects a steel piston inside, which shoves the starter drive into the flex plate and makes a connection in the backside. It's not exactly rebuildable, but it's openable. Did a video a couple years ago on restoring this old lathe. Definitely handy for all you guys who are like, I never saw it working. There it is working. So we'll take it apart, and since I know I'm not going to put it back together, I don't mind being a little medieval in the removal. Part of me is still nice. I want to be kind of nice to the equipment, but we can get a little medieval. In theory, you could just buy just a solenoid and keep the old starter motor, but you know, I think I paid what, $110 Canadian for this? It's why would you even waste time rebuilding it? Just put another one in. Nobody rebuilds things anymore. And then here it is, coming apart. These are the contacts inside there. Once the starter drive is into the flex plate, this rectangular guy on the right slides down and makes a connection on the two copper guys on the left. In the bad old days, this one on the right used to be a big, huge disc, a ring that would kind of move around, and it would connect these two on the left. And in the old days, you used to just kind of take these out. They're square, and you can rotate them and give you a nice, new, clean surface. These surfaces are not nice and not clean. They're definitely a damaged contact surface. And so once in 100, this thing wouldn't make the connection. But somebody else's battery giving me double the current, that actually jumped the gap and would start it. Could I rebuild this? Yeah, but I wouldn't bother. But that's it. It was a starter solenoid problem. It's fixed. It runs. It drives. And it has not started ever since I put the new starter in. As always, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you again.